My name's Joshua Wurtzel, and I'm a partner at Schlam Stone Dolan. Today we're going to be talking about tips for strategic loan acquisitions. So we represent a lot of either lenders or investors who are looking to either make or more often buy a loan that is secured by commercial real estate. There's either a mortgage loan, which is a loan that's secured by a mortgage lien on the underlying property. And then there's a mezzanine loan. Mezzanine loan, or a mezz loan, being a loan that is made not to the property owner, but to an entity that owns 100% of the property owner. And that mezzanine loan is secured not by the underlying property, but by the mezzanine borrower's 100% ownership interest in the entity that owns the underlying property. The different loans are differently secured, and it affects what types of rights you have. So the first question always is, if you're thinking about a strategic loan acquisition, what are your investment objectives? Almost always, however, I would say there are a few things that any buyer of a loan wants to look for. So first of all, perhaps the most important is the economics. You always want to make sure that the loan that you're buying, that there's enough equity to ensure that, whatever default interest, fees, and things that will accrue over time can be covered by the value of the property. Another thing to look at, what rights do the loan documents provide the lender? Generally, there are two different types of acquisitions. There's an acquisition of a performing loan, and then there's an acquisition of a non-performing loan or distressed debt. That's generally the situation that we start to get involved in. So you have to look at the underlying loan documents. What do they allow you to do? Generally, you want to look for a high default interest rate. If you're buying a mezz loan, perhaps the most important document is going to be the intercreditor agreement. And that's going to be an agreement between the mezz lender and the mortgage lender. And that's true on the opposite side as well. If you're buying a mortgage loan and there's a mezz loan as well, generally there's going to be an intercreditor agreement, and you have to be conscious of that. Another thing to think about is bankruptcy. What happens when a commercial borrower files for bankruptcy? So, in my view, the strongest defense you have against a bankruptcy filing is a good guarantee. Most commercial loans that are secured by real estate are made to the underlying borrower, which is a property owner, and the property owner is usually an entity. And generally, the loan is going to be non-recourse, meaning you can't go after anyone for the underlying debt beyond the value of the property. But generally, there's also going to be a guarantee. Now, the guarantee is not going to be a full recourse guarantee. It's going to be usually a springing recourse guarantee. And what that means is that there's going to be a warm body, either a operating company or a warm human body, someone with sufficient assets and net worth, who is guaranteeing the loan, and the guarantee kicks in only upon the occurrence of certain circumstances. But most of these guarantees will ultimately say that the guarantor will be liable for the underlying debt or for actual damages if there's a bankruptcy filing. So most of the time, the guarantor doesn't want to become personally on the hook for this loan. So having a guarantee that kicks in only if, among other things, there's a bankruptcy filing, oftentimes acts as a strong deterrent to a bankruptcy filing. The last very important thing to consider is, what does the foreclosure process look like, assuming you are going to foreclose on this loan? So the first thing you have to do as a lender when you have a non-performing loan is you have to accelerate the loan. Accelerating the loan means, instead of owing us, just interest every month, now you owe the full amount of the debt, and you owe it all today. When you accelerate a loan, there's some case law about whether the borrower then also owes a yield maintenance, which is basically a prepayment penalty. There is some dispute in the case law about whether a lender is entitled to a prepayment penalty when it is the lender that accelerates the loan. But when we're thinking about the foreclosure process, after we've accelerated the loan, what do we do? So this really turns on whether you have to do a judicial foreclosure or you can do a non-judicial UCC foreclosure. So if you are a mortgage lender, then you have to do a judicial foreclosure. And in New York, that means you have to go to court and file a judicial foreclosure action. That's a process that's going to play out over time. If you're a mezz lender, you don't do a judicial foreclosure, because remember, a mezz lender is secured not by the underlying property, but by the mezz borrower's 100% ownership interest in the entity that owns the underlying property. So you're not foreclosing on the property, you're foreclosing on the mezz borrower's equity interest in the property owner. So when you have a mezz loan, you can do something called a UCC foreclosure. That can be done a lot faster. You don't have to come out of pocket $50 million. You can use a credit bid. You can basically use the amount that the borrower owes you as your consideration for the property, and that's how you can become the property.